Hi, everybody. So I have been pondering something for the last week or so because I had a kind of spontaneous journey during the meditation that, wow, it really was a journey. It took me on a journey, and what what emerged from that experience has felt really, really important. So I want to share it. I tune in with my heart, and I try to learn. I try to not impose anything. I try to just open up to whatever it has to say to me, whatever, wherever it takes me. And I'm learning how to do that just directly. A while back, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, I stopped trying to do any kind of prescribed meditation and just began concentrating on what is my direct connection and where can I go if I trust that. So I begin by trying to remember where I am in this cosmology, by remembering that we are working on a creational level with creation, that we can choose to do that. And so I situate myself within that cosmology, and then I consult my heart. And the experience that I had was of connecting with the earth in a really profound and emotional way that I've never really experienced before. I could feel that my heart and the heart of the earth were connected. They were in some sense one and the same. And when I'm saying this about myself, I mean that I know that this is true for all of us humans. It was, not a metaphor. It was experiential. And as I was lying there, I could feel something about Mother Earth, about her very long life, her expression as a planet over just eons of time. And I've been pondering the nature of evil and its origins and how it came to invade the cosmos. And, I was very aware of a moment where there was a kind of incursion, where evil, for lack of a better word, but it's this consciousness of inversion, parasitical consciousness of inversion, succeeded in taking hold of our planet. And that this had happened not once but many times until it managed to get her fully subdued. I could sense that over immense spans of time that there had been so much violation and domination and extraction and exploitation and trauma visited upon her that her heart and her light had kind of retracted, hidden away, which is exactly what happens to us. Every human being understands this feeling of the heart retracting or becoming careful or, hiding your light, because that's what hearts do when hearts are wounded. And so I felt this very strong resonance between our experience as humans and her experience as a planet. It's a total parallel because we are in these, nesting fractal realities in the nature of our, galaxy, and the stellar and planetary bodies within our galaxy is fractal in nature. And we as humans are the ultimate fractal compression of everything in the universe within this avatar. So, of course, it makes sense that her story is our story. and that there are absolute parallels and resonances on all the different levels between her and us, just as there is between us and the sun, us and the solar system, us and, our galaxy is a fractal compression. So just as abused people, humans, become guarded, become careful, stop trusting, so too did the planet. For a time, her power has been muted or suppressed or overlaid, just as we have. And this is what made me realize, and I started hearing a phrase over and over in my mind, and I've been hearing it even when I'm not meditating, just randomly I hear it, and the phrase is, we have been living in their world. We've been living in their world. The world of that conquering force, that parasitical inversion, that we have been living in that world. That is the world that we've been living in. The world of the conquering forces that have suppressed the earth and suppressed humanity for eons of time. And many of us have spent our lives trying to adapt to that world when it's not even our world. It's not how we would operate if we were truly left to our own devices and not interfered with, right? We've spent our lives, and I could see how hard we have tried to adapt and adjust and succeed in that world, in a world that was never meant for us. It was meant to suppress us. Just as all of the systems that we have to operate inside have never really been for us. They have been set up to keep us in our place. So I just been hearing this over and over again. We've been living in their world. We have been living in their world, and we've been trying to make it in their world and taking it as a personal failure when we haven't been able to make it in their world. It seemed so silly. It seemed so silly all of a sudden. It made so much sense, right? And I thought, well, what if the problem has never been us? What if we've been trying to thrive inside of structures that are fundamentally misaligned with life itself? We can't be expected to, right? And yet we have tried. We have tried, guys. We've worked so hard. And one of the things I think we've learned is that in order to really succeed, and that in and of itself is a kind of, dangling carrot that only really makes sense in that alien structure, which is about conquest, right? And advancement in that sense. But, that's what we were born inside. That's the construct that we were born into, and everything that we've been taught is about how to succeed inside of that construct. And in order to do so, you almost have to surrender some part of your humanity, don't you? Yeah, you have to become like that consciousness that created the overlay, that created the construct. You have to sell your soul, right? On some level. And this is all coming to an end now. This is all coming to an end now. I can feel it. I know a lot of people are feeling it. But there is a grief underneath all of it. When I touched even a fraction of what the earth has carried for so long, what she has endured for so long, I cried, sobbed. I mean, cellularly, molecularly, like all the way down to my atoms. Because I could feel that, what we as a humanity have endured follows from what the planet has endured, because of course we're connected as her children, not just individually, collectively, generation after generation after generation. We have lived out in some form what her experience has been, as the many parts of this whole. the parts that are the whole. And we've inherited a lot of grief. We've inherited a lot of fear. We have inherited this contraction of the heart and this suppression of our light. And of course, the interference with our DNA has been part of that. But the amazing thing is that this is all shifting now. It is all, the earth is letting her light out again. She is, and I keep having this image that she's throwing off, like I'm throwing off this blanket. She's throwing off the heavy hands that have been upon her. And what stunned me the most about this experience was not, how deep the grief goes, but how powerful the life is. I could feel the earth is releasing, she's expanding, she's breathing again. And I could feel like her light is expanding. And it, how we see those, when we look at the sun and we see those coronal mass ejections happening in the sun, is just like exploding and all this energy and light and plasma is coming off the sun, right? It's exactly the same thing. The earth has her own version of that, and it's happening in waves. It's like contractions, like birth contractions, woof, right? And she's throwing off the oppression of these many millions of years, or however long it's been, and her light is getting brighter, and she's breathing more deeply again. And the funny thing is, in the last 3-4 weeks or so, I have been breathing more deeply. I've had access to parts of my breath that I haven't had access to in years. Since I don't even remember how long, and so I realized, as she's letting her light out, as she is breathing more deeply, more freely, we are being invited to do the same. We are being invited to do the same. And this is actually how we are birthing this new reality. It's happening through us. I know I've said that a bunch of times, but I mean, it's literally happening through us, because we are her. And she is us. And as I felt the freedom of this light, this kind of shrugging off of the construct, the overlay of constriction on our life force and on who we really are, it made me aware, by contrast, of how we have been living for so long, right? When you're born into something, you don't consider it. You don't think about it. You just think it's normal. You think it's whatever. It's just how things are, right? But when suddenly you catch a glimpse of another way, of a different state of being, right, that is completely the opposite, you can see all of a sudden, by contrast, the little box that you've been in, right? Everybody has some kind of experience that they can identify with, what I'm saying here. And, and I had this major realization as this journey was kind of coming to its natural conclusion. And that's that several years ago, I made a conscious decision to stay on the planet because it finally trickled down to my inner knowing that I had been my whole life trying to get up and out of here, that's why I was so intent on practicing Kundalini meditation, pineal gland, trying to get up and out of this construct, without realizing that gland is actually connected to the construct. It's just connected to the bliss area of the construct. I just realized, I've spent my whole life trying to leave, because it's so hard to be here, because you can't be a natural being here, right? That hasn't been possible. And I made a decision. I was like, okay, no more up and out, no more trying to get out of here, no more trying to leave. If I'm here, it's because I chose to be here. If I'm here, it's by agreement. So I'm going to honor that agreement. I'm going to stay. And I started working on bringing my energy back down into my body. But then I had this major realization during this meditation that staying is not the same thing as living. It's not the same thing. And I realized that I had chosen to stay, but I had not necessarily made the big step, which is choosing to live. Choosing to live means letting your light out. It means allowing your light, the light that you are, through. Allowing it to come through you. To be expressed as you. And that totally affects your physiology. It affects how you feel in your body. It affects everything about your life. It affects everything about you. There's this I saw how much of my life, and if it applies to me, it's got to apply to every human being. How much of our life has been shaped by a subtle, mostly unconscious fear of being here, like fully being here. Fully being here and being you. How many people do you know who actually are doing that? I'm guessing very few. There is a reluctance to fully commit to the experience. Okay, I'll speak for myself. For myself, there was an unconscious reluctance to fully commit to the experience. I was born 3 weeks late. I had to be induced. I've always wondered about that. Like, she's due and she's not coming. She's not coming. So I was forced to come. And it's not that I ever wanted to die. That, it wasn't like that active of a, there was no active intention there. But I realized how much I held back from fully living. In other words, being fully present, fully in my body, and fully feeling and experiencing this reality. I bet so many people can identify with that feeling. I think this is a reality for so many people, but we don't really realize that it's happening. It's not a conscious experience that we're aware of. And we come to this through millions of years of memories in our DNA, generation after generation, of what it's been like to be here, and what it's been like if you dared to attempt to fully live and be fully human and fully let your light out. That was not encouraged, let's say, putting it nicely. So I realized how much I had just kind of hung back from fully living, and I found substitutes for living in the real, right? I found substitutes. So instead of being, visible as a being, fully present and visible as a being, I chose to be visible as a performer, which is staying invisible. Instead of creating in my life, I could allow myself to have a creative life on stage, right? Instead of loving with my whole heart and allowing love to come through, life to come through me, I could only allow myself to love a false projection, right? I know I'm speaking for all of us when it doesn't really matter what you do with your life, but like in my case, it's such an obvious metaphor. It's like, pretend, right? Pretend to live instead of actually fully showing up just as the being that you are, not some persona, not some projection, not some personality, not some mask, not some kind of false self, which is illustrated, by the metaphor of the actor. And I'm not saying that all actors do that. I'm saying that in my case, there was an unconscious choice to be like, yeah, I'm here, I'm fully living, but it's actually not, it's at the second degree of living, pretending to live instead of truly living. Truly living is saying yes to life, no matter what the cost. It's being It's being real, alive, present. And that means you're going to have to feel. And that means you're going to have to witness how painful it has been to be here. Right? No wonder we don't want to do it. Right? And we have really been just totally trained out of it. Because the most powerful thing is that life force that we are, the light that we are. It is the most powerful thing. And I could feel it in this journey, in this meditation. I could feel that life coursing through me, and I could feel what a dam had been set up against it, against feeling it, against living it, against letting that life through. Because it has been very dangerous historically to do that here. So again, it's easy to understand why we suppress it ourselves. We've been taught to suppress it in ourselves because that is the one thing that brings down this entire construct. And as I felt it in myself, I was like, of course, this is the one thing. It brings down the construct immediately. Immediately. You get one being who is fully living at that level, right? A Christed being who is fully living at that level. They change the world. One being. Imagine if we all let our light out now. Imagine if we stopped being afraid now. Imagine if we stopped trying to fit into this construct now. The whole thing comes down. It's already happening. It's already happening. And I'm convinced I didn't have to convince myself. I just feel like that's why I had this experience, because it's actually happening, and because, right, this breakthrough that I had a personal experience of was my experience and current understanding of what is happening on a large scale across the planet, not just the planet, across the solar system, across probably, wherever this convergence is occurring, the same thing is happening. And I felt these words, again, moving through me during the journey, not from my mind, but like from up from my body, from my center of my being, and it said, I choose life. I choose life. I choose to live now. I choose my life. I choose to let life through me. No more dam. No more holding it back. No more trying to be safe, right? This is the time to do it, guys. This is the time to choose life, to choose to let your life force come through you, to let your light out now. This is the time. This is how it's happening. This is how the transition is occurring. It is happening through us. The planet is doing it. She is letting her light out, right? She is sending out bigger and bigger energy. She is freeing herself, and the same thing is happening to us. That's why I'm feeling it. That's why you're feeling it. That's why anybody who has a feeling right now that everything is changing, you're following the planet. This is what is happening. And by contrast, I could feel how suppressed our life force has been, not just mine, all of ours, how afraid that we have been to shine, to create, to love, to trust, to fully arrive, right? Fully arrive, fully land in your body as a sovereign, spiritual being who cannot be enslaved or controlled, who cannot be put down, who is not going to believe that you are small, that you are helpless, that you are sinful, rotten. That is just not true. That is not who we are. We are human beings. Humans are full universal fractals. There's a reason that you came in a human body. So it's time to stop believing the lie that has been programmed into us for as long as any of us can remember back to. At some point, something happened here. I think we're going to start to learn more about what our real history has been. But at some point, and maybe at several points, in the long, long ago, distant past, forces came here, forces of inversion came here and enslaved the planet. They enslaved the humanity. I'm sure it happened several times. This is just the most recent version, the most recent iteration of that same consciousness, but its time is up. Its time is up. We have been, up until now, afraid to shine, afraid to create, afraid to love, afraid to trust, afraid to be ourselves, to be fully human, and to stop buying that bullshit about who we're supposed to be. And it's time to stop living in their world and recreate the world in our image as humane beings. And every human being who embraces the light that they are, you don't have to buy this propaganda about, oh, humans are, bad, we'll just kill each other and we'll get into trouble. No, that's not what humans do. That's what the forces of inversion do. That's what the parasitical consciousness does. But if you once connect with that light that you are truly, if you feel the force of that life within you, which is source itself, you have no inclination whatsoever to behave that way. None. So, let's stop anticipating with the mind something that we've been programmed to think about ourselves, which is not true about us, not true of who we are. That's what they'd like you to believe that you are. But that's not who you are. If you're fully human, if you are still connected to source, if you have not sold your soul, if you are connected to your heart, and even if you, made choices in the past, as we all have, that were for the sake of your survival or the sake of your sanity or the sake of something, and you felt like you did wrong and sold out, and, you can come back if you really want to. If you are sincere, you can reconnect fully with your humanity again. We all have that capacity. We all understand what it's like to try to make it here. Try to survive in this world, right? And as the vice gets squeezed tighter and tighter around people at this moment in history, before the whole thing just, right? We're having like a visceral experience of how hard it has been. But this is the point of inflection now. And it requires us to let our light out. That was what I just knew, absolutely knew. Absolutely understood. The new world is not a political world. It's not a technological world. It's not even an external world in some sense. The new world, the new earth emerges when life itself is allowed to flow again. That's when we'll have free energy. That's when we will have all of the gifts of this bountiful earth who never stops giving. That's when the corrupt systems will fall and be replaced. It's very close. So through our hearts and our creativity and our standing in truth and our standing in our own standing, in other words, knowing who you are and refusing to be a slave, refusing to be small, refusing to be ashamed of yourself, refusing to be guilty. No. Standing in your natural authority as a full universal fractal of the source. That's what you are. That is how we bring through the new earth. The new earth is what happens when enough beings choose life, choose to let the life through them. Unstopper your heart. Open the valve of your connection with the source and don't hold it closed in fear. This is what was absolutely clear to me in this experience. So today I'm going to leave you with a question. Have you chosen to stay, or have you chosen to live? Because they are not the same thing. You can stay here, but that doesn't mean that you are fully living here, that you are fully committed to the experience of being a human being on the earth. And that means knowing your innate connection to Source and letting it through you. Not being afraid to let that life flow through you. I choose life. That's what it means. I choose to be fully as I can now, the real being that I am. The infinite, eternal soul that you are. And that is how this new life, new earth, is being birthed through us, because the earth is going through the same experience, because the sun is going through the same experience. Because our whole solar system is shifting. And if that is happening, then it has to be happening within the galaxy. And if it's happening within the galaxy, because the galaxy is also a fractal being, then it has to be happening in the entire universe, in these densities, which have been invaded by an inversion. So that's over now. That's coming to an end. It's a foregone conclusion. The earth is choosing life. The sun is choosing life. Life itself is moving again. And this is what this moment is asking of us. Will you choose it too? And stop pussyfooting around and saying, I can't. I have to wait until it's okay, or no, just we can do it now. So this is what I am telling myself. I choose life, the life that is within me. I choose to live now, and I allow life to live through me. Everything else flows from there. Thanks for your presence. Nice to see you all. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being open. I'll see you next time.